Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of No Niche Zone, the podcast about everything. I'm your host, Priscilla Davies, and we're back at it again. Another week, another episode, another show, more stories, more drama, more tea, because that's what we do here, right? It actually, you know what? It's been a tough week, y'all. We've lost quite a few of our loved celebrities this week. Some more loved than others. Some maybe loved back in the day, not so much in current times. Um, oh man, first and foremost, Malcolm Jamal Warner. Oh God, what a bummer, man. When I saw, I'm like going through my news feed in the morning, and you can see what's coming down the pipe, and I saw a picture of him, and my mind, like the first thought I had was like, oh, I wonder what project he's working on. Oh, I wonder what he's doing right now. I had nothing. You know how sometimes you'll see a picture and you're like, oh God, is it a death announcement? It was like nothing. It's like your body or your intuition will know in advance. Nothing prepared me for it. I 100%. I was like, oh, I guess he must be working on something new. So I took my time getting to the article. I read like 3 other articles, and then I go and I'm like, Malcolm Jamal Warner dead at 54. I mean, what a bummer. I love that most of this 90% of the stories or 99% of the stories we're hearing about him are good stories. We don't have any, nobody's coming out the woodwork, and hopefully nobody does. But apparently he really was just a good dude. And it's really sad to hear him go. One thing that is a little frustrating though is we're now on the 3rd story as to what happened to him. Why are we getting conflicting stories about how he passed? The first story was that he went out for a sunset swim by himself, and then he drowned. Then they changed that story, and it was, oh no, actually he was swimming with his daughter, and they both got sucked into a riptide or a rough current, and then but the daughter was saved. 2 surfers went out and saved the daughter, and one of the other surfers almost died. But only Malcolm Jamal Warner was the only one that didn't make it. And then the latest story we have is that no, in fact, his daughter wasn't with him, and he wasn't alone, and he actually went out with a friend to go swimming and got caught up in a current, and he was not able to be successfully resuscitated. So I don't know. We've just been getting all these different stories. And I'm just okay, not even in a conspiracy theory way, but just in a journalism way, because these are from credible sources. It wasn't just the internet, gossip. So, we don't, hopefully we'll find out 100% definitively what happened to him. But either way, it doesn't matter because he's gone. And it does matter, obviously, but the end result is that he's gone. And it's, what a bummer, especially for Gen X, especially for millennials, especially elder millennials who grew up on the Cosby Show. I mean, what a bummer. And then of course, Ozzy Osbourne passed, and Ozzy has a checkered past, but he was a legend, and he had his his what do they call it, resurgence or comeback story, I guess you could say, in the 2000s with his reality show. And the Osbourne show was actually one of the pioneering reality shows. I forgot about that. They were one of the shows that took the reality genre from just the Real World, which is kind of what was all that we had at that time, to the huge reality show franchises that we have now. That was the Osbournes was part of that. That was part of the early stages of reality TV as what it is today. So, sad to hear him passing. He led a complicated life. So, it wasn't all, cherries and roses, if you will. But again, sad to see another legend passing. And then Hulk Hogan died. I mean, it's and then there's some other people who died as well. But, it's it's just one after another. I mean, I don't know. Is this the threes that they're talking about when they say that, bad things happen in threes or people pass in threes? Hulk Hogan he suffered from cardiac arrest. At least that's what the reports are saying now. And Yeah, Hulk Hogan's a funny one, right? Because it was sad for me because he was a part of my childhood, WWF, WWE, like Hulk Hogan was that dude back in the day when I was like really little, man. Are you kidding me? And I think if I remember correctly, I think my brother had a Hulk Hogan action figure. I think so, or somebody did. But yeah, it was, it's almost like a second death because the first you had to mourn the loss of Hulk Hogan when we found out that he was a raging racist, for example, that he also was MAGA, right? Like, so we all had, those of us who loved him had to like let him go at that time. And it's just like a second grieving all over again with him actually dying. It's just kind of like with him and Malcolm Jamal Warner especially, it's like slices of childhood. This is like my early childhood years, and it's like, man, life is changing. The world is changing and life is changing. Regardless of how you feel about these people individually, it's just a sign of just getting older and life changing, and it is what it is. But yeah, we've been in mourning collectively in this country for the last week or so. So that's pretty much what's been going on recently, not in terms of, just current events, if you will. Quick little update on the Epstein files. Day 370. No, I'm kidding. I guess now it's probably like day 14? Day maybe 17, 18, I don't know. But whatever day we're at, Donald Trump still has not, or not Donald Trump, sorry, Pam Bondi, the DOJ, the FBI, Kash Patel, Dan Bongino, they still have not released the Epstein files. They are still not released. However, Donald Trump did send Pam Bondi to jail to go talk to Ghislaine Maxwell, whom we all know is literally the only person serving time right now for the whole entire Jeffrey Epstein sex trafficking scandal. Of course, the only person who's actually in jail is the woman, right? But he sent her, Pam Bondi, who, to remind you, she's the head of the DOJ. She's the attorney general of the country. He sent her, and also she was once his personal attorney. Just add that in there, okay? He sent his personal attorney, who's also now the AG of the whole entire country, to go and sit down and have a talk with Ghislaine. That's not what the people asked for. Okay, the people didn't ask for that. They said, we want to see the list. We want to see the files. Trump said, I got you. I got you. You want to see the files? I hear you loud and clear. Clearly and loudly, because my ears are perfect. They've never been bad. I'm going to give you what you want. Pam Bondi, go talk to Ghislaine Maxwell while she's in jail. So, again, it's giving bait and switch. So that's the latest at this point. I feel like people have been speculating that they went there to get some more tea, but also that they might be potentially giving Ghislaine some immunity so that she can turn on people. But someone speculated that they might do that so that she only reveals, you guessed it, Democrats, the left, the liberal elites, the coastal elites. So I mean, again, this is Trump we're talking about, so I wouldn't be surprised. I feel like I'm talking about a soap opera. This is like, remember when you used to be watching soap operas with your grandmama? And you're watching the same storyline play out for like years sometimes. Years they don't know that the baby belongs to this man instead of this man, right? And it's like years you see like someone getting away with switching the DNA results, right? That's what it feels like with this whole Trump thing. It's like, I just can't wait to see how this all fully plays out. I do 100% believe the truth. I believe the truth will always come out. That in my life experience, that's something that I've witnessed personally, and I believe the truth will come out at some point. The question is, how long is it going to take, and what manipulated truth are we going to get before we get the real truth, especially if it's coming through the Trump administration and his cronies, Pam Bondi and his homies over at the FBI, okay? So I'm definitely curious to see where this is heading, and I ain't gonna lie. I'm like, I know it's gonna come out. My question is when? When is this going to come out? Cause I'm like, to me, I feel like one of two things is gonna happen. Either they're going to be released because of pressure, or they're gonna get leaked. They're either gonna get released or get releaked, okay? And I don't. To me, I'm surprised it hasn't gotten leaked already. I don't know. I could never be working at that government agency knowing that the Epstein files are right over there. Bitch, don't let me be the maintenance woman. Don't let me be the custodian. They're right there in that desk. Baby, I would be taking pictures with a burner phone so quickly. And hitting up my I don't know what contacts, but I will find some contacts. Okay, at the local I was gonna say the local precinct, at the local news. I'm just waiting for this stuff to be released. But anyway, I'm like, somebody somewhere. I know somebody at that office. I know somebody at that office. I know somebody working there and is a disgruntled employee. Do America a service. Do us a solid, y'all. Do us a solid. Okay, let's get into the show. I can't believe I've just been cat. All right, let's get into this show, guys. So I was on TikTok doing my daily scroll, and I came across this TikTok where this woman said that, apparently we, the colloquial we, had recently discovered that let me make sure I get this correctly, if the buying power of the minimum wage in 1970 continued to grow proportionately to what it was back in 1970. So if we had the same buying power of the minimum wage in 1970, what you can get for the minimum wage in 1970, the same buying power today, the equivalent would mean that the minimum wage should be $66 an hour, y'all. $66 an hour. Now, when I heard this, I was like, okay, one thing about me is I'm a researching hoe, okay? So I was like, let me do a little research and see if this is accurate. Now, I hate to break it to you, but the information that I found did in fact say that 66 was a reach. $66 an hour as minimum wage was a reach. So I was like, well, what should it be? So I went and I looked it up. And while it's not $66 an hour, what it should be, and this is according to Cornell University, okay? Based on productivity, which has steadily increased, quote, if the pre-1968 connection between productivity and minimum wage kept its historical pace, then today's federal floor would be nearly $26 per hour. About 3.5 times the current rate of $7.25 an hour. In case you didn't know, our current minimum wage in this country is $7.25, y'all. $7.25. Okay? Which is 3.5 times less than what it should be if we had kept up with productivity. If the minimum wage had grown at the same rate as productivity. Now, this is a different metric from what the person who said $66 per hour used. They use the buying power of the minimum wage in 1970. They're in the studies that I saw, they were using productivity, okay? However, the range that I got was $26 to about $28. There was different estimations, but give or take $26 to about $28 an hour should be the minimum wage if we kept progressing. Making sure that people were getting paid and getting raises at the same level of productivity as we were doing since the 70s. That means the minimum wage should be $26-ish an hour. And it's $7.25 right now. And I want to put that into perspective for you. It's $7.25 an hour, and some states, 20 to be specific, have the federal minimum wage as their state minimum wage, because just because the federal minimum wage is a certain amount, it doesn't have to be that in your state. For example, here in California, the minimum wage is $16.50 an hour. That's our minimum wage here. But the federal minimum wage is $7.25 an hour. And there are 20 states in 2025 that have a minimum wage of $7.25. If you're living in some of these states, I'm just going to call out a few. Idaho, Wyoming, Utah. Utah surprised me. I thought Utah had money. I thought that's where the Mormons were. And I thought the Mormons had money. Also, like, I don't know. I thought Utah had money, but you don't have to have money if you got a bad government, okay? Kansas, Texas. Texas has some goddamn nerve. That oil-rich state has some goddamn nerve to have their minimum wage be $7.25. I can't believe Texans allow that. Y'all better get your guns and start shooting some shit. I can't believe that. Louisiana, Oklahoma, Georgia, Alabama, South Carolina, North Carolina, Pennsylvania. How dare you? How dare you? $7.25. The neighboring states of Pennsylvania, New York, New Jersey, my home state, what up? Delaware, Maryland, is between $15 an hour and $15.50 an hour. And Pennsylvania has some nerve being $7.25. Even West Virginia has a higher minimum wage. I mean, wow. North Carolina, South Carolina, even Florida is $13 an hour. Texas, you should be ashamed of yourself. So some of these states in our country, if you're living in some of those states that I mentioned, you're getting paid minimum wage, you're making $7 an hour. When if we had historically continued the trend based on productivity, we should be getting paid 26 plus, give or take, dollars an hour as a minimum wage, y'all. I want you guys to let that sink in. We're getting screwed, is what I'm saying here, folks. I want you guys to let that sink in, okay? The fact that, so again, I don't know what that $66 per hour number came from. If anybody knows, I would love information. Throw it in the chat, throw it in the comments. I couldn't find any information about that. But even if we're just to go with, the information I found, it should still be 3.5 times what it is today. And of course, that begs the question, well, if productivity has been rising, if, profits have been rising, why, and wages have been stagnant, where's all that money going? And I mean, we already know the answer to this, right? It's going into CEOs' pockets. It's going into the billionaires' pockets. It's turning people into billionaires, right? And, there's a discussion out there about whether billionaires are even an ethical thing. Should billionaires even exist? But part of the reason that billionaires exist is because of things like this. It's going into CEOs getting their second or third yacht. Like Jeff Bezos, who has a yacht to follow his yacht. Can you believe that? This fool got a yacht to follow his yacht. And the minimum wage is $7.25 in this country. Okay? So obviously, it's going into CEOs' pockets. It's going into bonuses. It's going to the shareholders, right? Those are the people who are benefiting from this, but the workers are getting screwed. And speaking of billionaires and people exploiting folks, I went to this website called youversabillionaire.com. youversabillionaire.com. Okay? This is a website, and it's literally spelled YOUVS, a billionaire. And you can go to this website and you can type in your yearly salary and you can compare it to a billionaire. In this case, on the website, they specifically compare it to Elon Musk's wealth. Okay? So I went in there and I typed in $100,000 as my yearly salary, right? I feel like that's a pretty fair, average for the whole entire country, right? 100K is someone who, for the most part, is doing pretty well. Back in the day, 100K, it was popping, right? But now you're doing okay. 100K, you're doing well enough, all right? So if you're making $100,000 a year, Elon Musk's annual earnings are 1,210,000 times larger than yours. So you're making $100,000 a year. Elon Musk makes $1.21 million more than you do per year. Per year. So in other words, when you spend $1, it puts the same size dent in your wallet as Elon spending $1,210,000 would put into his wallet. I'm gonna need you to let that sink in. When you spend $1, the way it feels, the emotional sensations that you get when you spend $1, you put $1 in an unhoused person's cup. Okay, what can you even buy for $1? I don't even think I can't remember the last time I handed $1 to somebody, and that was like to cover everything. But think about what it feels like to spend $1 on something. That's the same emotional feeling that Elon Musk gets spending $1.21 million. It's the same dent in his wallet as it would be to your wallet spending $1. Think about that. Think about what a throwaway dollars are. I always think about, y'all remember that show, Will and Grace? There was a scene where Karen, she comes from like the club. It's like the morning. They're like, oh, Karen, like, look at you. You're up early. She's like, but did I go to sleep? And she's like going through her purse and remember Karen was like super loaded, and she finds a $20 bill and she's like, oh, how did this get in here? And she crumbles it up and throws it, right? Such a funny scene. That show was so funny, by the way. But in the same way that, you would be like, oh, $1 here, who cares? That is how Elon Musk would feel about $1.21 million. And the minimum wage is $7.25. You putting 25 cents into a parking meter is the equivalent of Elon Musk buying an Audi R8. Oh, sorry, two. Two Audi R8s. So when you take a quarter and put it into the washing machine, when you put it into the parking meter, I don't even know what else you can use a quarter for. The same effect a quarter has on you would be the same effect as Elon Musk buying two Audi R8s. Can you imagine you could buy an Audi R8 with a quarter? Because that's what it feels like to Elon. For relative costs of Dunkin' Donuts, I'm sure they were probably a sponsor of this website. Dunkin' Donuts $5 lattes. So you're buying a $5 latte. The equivalent would be Elon Musk buying 4 Dunkin' Donuts franchises. Finding a $20 bill in your pocket. In order for Elon to have the same excitement that we feel as finding a $20 bill in our pocket, he would have to find $24 million and $24,200,000. Our $20 feels like $24 million, $200 to freaking Elon. Can you believe that? A fully loaded Tesla Model S would set you, if you were making $100,000 a year, back $150,990. What would that be equivalent to, Elon? 12 cents. 12 cents. 12 cents. The median home listed in the United States was $346,900. I don't know why I can't read numbers. $346,990. To Elon, that would be the equivalent of 29 cents, meaning Elon could buy the average house in America for the equivalent of what would feel like 29 cents to somebody making $100,000 a year. And obviously, the average person in America isn't making $100,000 a year. So I chopped that. I said, you know what? Let me just take a look at 50,000. And obviously, every number I just gave you basically have to double it. Okay? Putting 25 cents in a parking meter for someone making $50,000 would be the same as Elon Musk buying a Rolls Royce Ghost. It would be $5 latte for you. $50,000 a year earner would be the same thing as Elon buying 8 Dunkin' Donuts franchises. And the minimum wage is $7.25. This is what we mean when we're talking about the inequality. I love this website because it really helps you to put into perspective the wealth gap and inequality. It is uncomparable. It is not, if I work hard enough, I can make as much money as Elon. That's not how this works. Okay? It's the fact that to the average person, what would be life-changing money would literally be the $20 bill in Karen's purse from Will and Grace that she threw out of her purse because she was grossed out. She would have such a low currency in her purse. That's what it would be to the billionaires out there. And this was just with Elon Musk's money. We could do this with any other billionaire. I think it's important for people to realize, to actually see tangibly how much we as the American people are getting screwed. And these people like Elon Musk are literally buying the government so they don't have to pay taxes. And they're already paying effectively one of the lowest tax rates in the history of this country. Back in the day, the tax rate on high income earners was something like 94%. And of course, this was, it wasn't all of your income. This was taxed on a certain amount after a certain point. So, arbitrarily, this is not accurate, but it's like you make over, $100 million or 100, whatever it is, then they start taxing whatever you make over that at 94%. That's what it used to be. Until Ronald Reagan came into office, and that fool dropped that shit down to like 27%, give or take. I'm not necessarily a numbers person, but give or take. And ever since him, it's just been steadily dropping, and they won't be happy until the effective tax rate is negative, aka we people have to pay them to be rich. That's what they want it to be. Because they will fight, and they're fighting too. They are buying the entire government. We saw the first row at the inauguration. Billionaires in the first row. That told you everything you needed to know. And it's so wild that we have people who are making these exorbitant amounts of money while simultaneously fighting people. Because remember, what did Elon do when he decided to moonlight in the government for 15 minutes? He decided to create a government agency called Doge, where the whole sole purpose was to cut shit. How dare you, a billionaire, think you have the right to be telling people what they can and can't cut? Let's start by cutting your fucking bank account and redistributing that wealth. Let's start there. But it's so wild that these people are sitting here fighting tooth and nail to prevent the minimum wage from going up. It's been $7.25 for 15 years. And they're only trying to get it to $15, which is still well below what it should be if we kept up with productivity, which is about $26, $27 an hour. So, folks, especially people who want to defend the billionaires, you're like, oh, well, it's not our fault. It's not their fault. Because, you think that one day you're going to be a billionaire and you don't want people to come take your money. It's important for people to put into perspective how much they're screwing us. This is like I said, take the time, go to youverseabillionaire.com, type in $36,000 a year, because that's what a lot of people are making, and see what that's really like. And then remember, you got to pull out globally and see how that relates to the global average. Because once you leave the country, it just drops. It's important for us as people to know who the real enemy is. We cannot continue to be focusing on each other and arguing with each other about, protecting rich people and allowing them to get richer while we're suffering. It's one thing if everybody was living good. Yeah, make as much money as you want. But you mean to tell me our minimum wage is $7.25? These rich people have been fighting tooth and nail for 15 years to keep it that way? 3.5 times less than what it should be if we kept up with productivity. You mean to tell me that's the case? And these motherfuckers are and they continue to fight as they're getting richer and richer and richer so they can have a yacht that trails behind their main yacht. Let's wake up, people, and pay attention to who the real enemy is, because I promise you, it's not us. It's not each other. All right, let's move on, y'all. Okay. Guys, it might be time for us to apologize to the Hoteps. Okay. Not for real. But at least with regard to this one thing, okay? Do you remember where you were? I'm talking to my Black people. Do you remember where you were the first time that, I don't know, maybe you were watching a Dr. Umar Johnson video? I don't know. Do you remember where you were the first time you heard a Hotep say, Black people, make sure you take organ donor off of your license? Do you remember where you were? I remember where I don't remember where I was, but I probably was at home about 16 hours deep into a rabbit hole of Hidden Colors. I was probably on Hidden Colors 26 and, Dr. Umar. But I remember years ago hearing about this, Hoteps were out here saying, make sure Black people take it off your ID card. Like, if you want to donate, put it into your will. Don't put it on your driver's license because they're targeting Black people. And, you got to be careful, right? So I listened to the Hoteps. I was like, okay, King. I hear you, King. I actually did after that take it off, which is so funny. And, moved on with my life. This is years ago. But apparently, folks, the Hoteps were onto something. According to the New York Times, the New York Times did an investigation, okay? And they put all their findings into an article called "A Push for More Organ Transplants is Putting Donors at Risk." Quote, people across the United States have endured rushed or premature attempts to remove their organs. Some were gasping, crying, or showing other signs of life, end quote. So the New York Times did an investigation, okay? And in their investigation, we're going to talk about what they found out, but they essentially found out that organ donors are, essentially, I don't want to say in a lot of cases, but in more cases than should be, and maybe even more as the investigation continues, or people are being pressured essentially into becoming organ donors, or families are being pressured into making their family members donate their organs, if they're incapacitated or whatever. And this article, y'all, goes into a bunch of different anecdotal stories, but it helps you to get an idea of like what's really going on. So one person we find out about is a woman named Misty Hawkins, who was a 42-year-old who had choked while she was eating, and she was in a small Alabama hospital because she had fallen into a coma, okay? And so her mother decides that she's gonna take her off of life support and donate her organs. So she's taken off of life support, and after 103 minutes, she's declared dead, okay? A surgeon goes in, he makes an incision in her chest, he saws through the breastbone, and that, y'all, is when the doctors discovered that Misty's heart was in fact still beating, and she appeared to be breathing. Okay? And that's just one story that they get into. And we'll get into some more of these stories. Actually, let me go into some, because some of these stories, we'll get into all of the information, but I want to go into another one of these stories because some of these stories were wild. Let's see. Here was another story. Oh, here's a story from Brianni Duff. Okay. Brianni Duff was a surgical technician in Colorado. And she said that one patient that she had, a middle-aged woman, was crying and looking around, but doctors still sedated her, removed her from the ventilator, according to Ms. Duff and a former colleague. So remember, they did an investigation. So it's not just her. They corroborated her story with a former colleague. The patient did not die in time to donate organs, but they did die hours later. And this is what Brianni Duff had to say. Quote, "I felt like if she had been given more time on the ventilator, she could have pulled through. I felt like I was part of killing somebody," end quote. And Brianni actually ended up quitting after that and actually ended up temporarily leaving the profession altogether. She did come back, but still, nonetheless. So essentially what's been going on, okay, is that typically whenever organs are donated, the vast majority of organs that are donated are from people who have been clinically pronounced brain dead. Okay, we all know, right? Vegetative state, they're brain dead. They can't basically they can't function without life support. Okay, they can't breathe, they can't eat, nothing without life support. That's typically where most of the donors come from. But recently, in recent years, as the system has pushed to increase transplants, a growing number of patients they've been using circulatory death donations, as there has been an increase in demand, right? So typically it would be from a brain dead patient, but in addition to, they're also now using more and more circulatory death donation. These are different. Circulatory death patients are usually on life support, often in a coma. Their prognosis is more of a medical judgment call, okay? They are alive with some brain activity, but doctors have determined that they are near death and won't recover. So that's the difference, right? It's not brain dead where doctors say they have no chance. Where they are brain dead, right? That's a medical diagnosis. No, this is something different. This is more of a judgment call. This is the doctor looking at them and saying, I don't think they're going to pull through. I don't know if they're going to pull through. Okay. So that's circulatory death donation, which is different. And there has been a rise in this. There has been a rise in this in recent years. And so if relatives agree to the donation, the doctor will cut off life support, wait for the patient's heart to stop. This is how circulatory death donation works. Wait for the patient's heart to stop. And the rules say it has to happen within an hour or two for the organs to be viable. And after the person is declared dead, then the surgeons go in. Okay, so this is a case of them removing someone who they have deemed is not going to recover from life support, letting them die, and they have to be dead for a certain amount of time, like that first one that we talked about, how she was pronounced dead for 103 minutes. There's a certain amount of time they have to be pronounced dead before they can actually go in and procure these organs. So in recent years, there's been a growing number of patients who have endured premature or bungled attempts to retrieve their organs. So what the New York Times revealed was, quote, a pattern of rushed decision-making that has prioritized the need for more organs over the safety of potential donors. So there's a bunch of stories that have emerged as the transplant system is increasingly turning to a type of organ removal called what we said circulatory death. Whereas before it accounted for a third of all donations last year, about 20,000 organs, which is triple the number from 5 years earlier, y'all. Okay? And so some organ procurement organizations, all right, have been, at least according to the New York Times, what they say, quote, aggressively pursuing circulatory death donors and pushing families and doctors toward surgery. Okay. So what the findings were essentially that you have these organizations, every state has an organization that is there to procure these donations, right? And it's an organization that will be in the hospital. And essentially what they found is that they were pressuring the doctors, the families into doing this. They found that, quote, 55 medical workers in 19 states told the Times that they had witnessed at least one disturbing case of donation after circulatory death. Workers in several states said they had seen coordinators pursuing hospital clinicians to administer morphine, propofol, and other drugs to hasten the death of potential donors, end quote. And that was another thing. It wasn't just like, necessarily pressuring. It was also violations of rules. Like, for example, you're not supposed to approach the family until the family themselves have decided that they want to donate. But there were examples where they found where these organizations had not waited and had gone and approached the family before they had even made that decision. Also, instances where people had asked the actual person themselves for consent to donate their own organs while they were still heavily sedated or coming down from being heavily sedated. So there's like murky areas like that, which was part of the issue, part of like what's going on. And there was a federal investigation that was prompted by a case that happened in Kentucky where a man whose organs were pursued even as he shook his head and drew his knees to his chest. According to the investigation, they found the State Procurement Organization of Kentucky had ignored signs of increasing consciousness in 73 potential donors. Isn't that something? There was another case in Miami in 2023 of a potential donor who had broken his neck, and he, quote, began crying and biting on his breathing tube, which a procurement organization worker said he interpreted as him not wanting to die. But clinicians sedated the patient, withdrew life support, waited for death, and removed the organs, according to the worker and colleague he told at the time. And there are a bunch of other stories, but this is the last one I'm going to tell because this is something else. In 2022, Ms. Gallegos was homeless and 38 years old when she was hospitalized in a coma at Presbyterian Hospital in Albuquerque, okay? And her family was told that she would never recover. Quote, her relatives agreed to donation, but as preparations began, they saw tears in her eyes. Their concerns were dismissed, according to interviews with family and 8 hospital workers. Donation coordinators said the tears were a reflex, okay? Which that is a possibility. On the day of the planned donation, Ms. Gallegos was taken to a pre-surgery room where her 2 sisters held her hands. A doctor arrived to withdraw life support. Then a sister announced she had seen Ms. Gallegos move. The doctor asked her to blink her eyes, and she complied. The room erupted in gasps. Still, hospital workers said the procurement organization wanted to move forward with removing the organs. A coordinator said it was just reflexes and suggested morphine to reduce movements. Basically, they say drug her. The hospital refused. Instead, workers brought her back to her room and she made a full recovery, y'all. They almost killed that lady and donated her organs, and she turned around and made a full recovery. It is something else. I encourage you guys to check out this article. It's from the New York Times. It's called "A Push for More Organ Transplants. It's Putting Donors at Risk." So, maybe, like I said, we might could owe the Hoteps a little apology. They were onto something. They were onto something with telling us to be hesitant about being donors. And, a lot of people, when I saw this, I read the comments and stuff, and a lot of people were talking about how, they took themselves off the donor list because of things like this, because of hearing of things like this. And it's something else because, you're made to believe like, oh, that's just a conspiracy theory. Like nobody, and listen, some things are conspiracy theories, but I'm really glad that the New York Times took the time to investigate in this and look into it. And it makes you wonder how many people, there's more stories in here of people showing signs of agree, not just like, put a thumbs up or something, but like they said, one guy pulled his knees to his chest. Like it's something else. So, what an interesting story. So just, something to keep in mind next time you go to the DMV and renew your license, folks, just something to keep in mind. And folks, with that being said, we've come to the end of another episode of No Niche Zone, the podcast about everything. You guys can follow us across all platforms at No Niche Zone Pod. You can also subscribe to our YouTube, same name. You can send your listener letters into no niche zone at gmail.com. And you can also follow me personally across all platforms at Pris the Goddess. Folks, we'll see you next time.